What's going on, guys? I got another video for y'all today. I'm going to be showing you the 5 things that I hate about my 370Z. I know it's the same type of video that pretty much every YouTube channel does. Figured I'd just get this one knocked out early so that way I can move on to some other videos. But before we can do that, I need to take this car in for a wash because if y'all can see that, it's quite dirty. So yeah, let's hit the car wash and then I'm going to show you guys the 5 things that I hate about my car. Alright guys, so the Z is now all cleaned up. It's time to talk about the things that I don't like about my car. I'm actually going to break this up into 2 sections. I'm going to talk about things that most buyers should be aware of before they pick up a 370, and then I'm going to talk about the things that I personally don't like about my car. Alright, so first let's talk about the 5 things that you guys should be aware of before buying a 370Z. Alright, so number 5 on the list is the interior. It is rather plain in here. It's very boring. It seems very outdated. The passenger dash, I mean, look at that. It's just depressing. There's nothing to look at. I mean, you got a vent there, I guess, but there's just nothing to look at here. The leather is just kind of cheap feeling. The steering wheel is from a 2008 Nissan Maxima. It's still in production today. The Z's coming out on the line. The 2019 models still have the same steering wheel. This is so outdated. It's just boring in here. The other thing with the interior is the lack of cup holders and storage space. I mean, you really only get one functioning cup holder, and it's here in the center, and that can hold maybe a medium-sized drink. You do get 2 small cup holders that are in the doors, but those things are hardly big enough to store a can. And I'm not talking about like a Monster can, I'm talking about like a Dr. Pepper can. There's really no room in here whatsoever to put any drinks. There are lots of little cubbies and areas that you can put storage space. You got one here in the middle of the dash. You've also got this one here in the center console, and there's even a little space here in the back, but these things are all really small, and there's just not a lot of space to in any of these to put it. I mean, even the glove box, it's just tiny. Number 4 are the seats. These are kind of special in their own right. If you go to rest your head on the headrest, the seat actually pokes you in the back. It's like it's poking you, making sure that you're awake. Now this wouldn't bother me normally, however, half of the friends that I've had riding this car with me have complained about it. They'll sit there and rest their head on it and then tell me, hey, why are my seats poking me in the back? It's really annoying. The other thing is the seats aren't height adjustable, and that's not an issue for me because I'm not really short. I'm 6'1", so I can see over the hood just fine. But if you're short, this is going to be your view through the front windshield. So that can be a bit of a problem. Getting in and out of the seats can also be fairly tricky as well. The bolstering's pretty high, so you have to lift your leg up kind of high to be able to get it over the seat. And then since the door sills are fairly thick, you have to stick your legs out a little far to get out, and it's really just not a graceful process. Now the third item on my list is the transmission and the clutch. Now this is pretty specific to manual Zs, but the gearbox is rather clunky, which I personally like, but a lot of owners will say that it just feels really unrefined and just annoying when you're trying to shift. And second gear is especially bad. Not only is it a little more clunky than the other gears, but it feels like maybe the gap between the ratio or something else is off, because whenever I'm trying to shift from first to second, I can never get a smooth shift. I don't know what it is about the car, but it's very tricky to get in from first to second gear. Now the other thing is the clutch. The clutch pedal is a little heavy. It's not too bad, but the worst part about it is the fact that the engagement point is really high up. Usually in most cars it's maybe 25% all the way up, but in this car it feels like it's that last 75% where the clutch actually begins to engage. And the engagement point is also very narrow. It's almost like it doesn't really have a middle point. It's just on or off, engaged or disengaged, and that can be really annoying, especially if you're learning how to drive a manual. So I wouldn't recommend this if you've never driven a manual before. Alright, number 2 is the cost of ownership. Let's talk about gas. This car only takes premium gas, and it's not the most efficient vehicle. I mean, it's not horrible either. It gets about 22 miles to the gallon, but since it only takes premium and it has like a 16 or 18 gallon tank, this thing costs about $50 to fuel up, and that's not even the worst of it. I've heard some people say that they can spend like $80 at the pump, so it's not cheap to fuel. The parts can also be rather expensive. I recently bought a new set of just rear tires on this car, and they costed $450 for 2 tires. It's insane. And that's not even to mention some of the other parts in this car. Let's take the headlights, for instance. For a set of 2 headlights on my Sentra, it costs something like $120 to get a set of decent replicas. On this car, it costs $600 for 1 headlight. I think it has something to do with Nissan having like a patent on their headlights, but I'm not entirely sure. But it's just insane that you have to spend $1,200 just to buy a new set of headlights. The insurance can also be kind of costly just depending on your driver history. I mean, it's not that bad for me. I think if I were to go on a policy with just the Z, it'd be something like $130. But with it only being a 2-seater and, you know, depending, I guess, on your age and your previous driving history, it can be pretty costly to insure this car. So the absolute #1 thing that you guys should know about the 370Z is the safety. Let's talk about the safety ratings. The safety ratings are a little concerning, not because they're bad, but simply because there are none. None. Nissan has not put this through an extensive set of safety tests, mainly I think because the production numbers have just been too low to warrant having to do that. But it is rather concerning knowing that there's no ratings out there, so I have no idea how this is going to perform in a crash. I mean, I've seen images of people who have crashed their Z, and the airbags do go off, but how well do they actually work? And to add to the safety aspect, the visibility in here is rather poor. You can't see hardly anything out of this car. There's a huge blind spot back there in the back. It's got a huge rear windshield, but as y'all can see, you can't see anything out of the back of that. Front windshield is rather narrow, so there's just a lot of blind spots on this car. In fact, the car's visibility is so poor, I've seen on several websites that this car has been listed as the #1 worst car to be able to see out of. The visibility is so bad, I'm actually going to do a separate video showing you guys how big the blind spots are on this, so stay tuned for that. Alright, so those are the things that you guys should be aware of before picking up a 370Z. Now I want to talk about the things that I personally hate about my car. No. Hold on, I gotta find some things I don't like. Alright guys, so if I'm honest, there's not a lot of things that I really hate about the car, but there are a few things that I dislike a little bit about it. So I really don't hate this vehicle, I absolutely love it, but there are just some things that are a little annoying, so let me talk about that. Number 5 is the rear bumper. From most angles it looks fine, but from others it kind of sticks out a little bit past the fender line, so it looks a little weird to me. It almost looks like it's doing like a duck face. I don't know if y'all can see it, but I can. It just looks sort of awkward, so I'm planning on changing it over to an AIM-used bumper in the future. Number 4 is how outdated this car is. So much of this car was carried over from the 350Z. For instance, the handles, I think these are the exact same handles from the 350, or at least they look exactly the same. I think the 350 also shares the same headers. A lot of the exhaust looks the same. I also really hate the flat aluminum color that they used on the handles on the outside of the car. I think it absolutely ruins the look of the vehicle. So the first thing that I did when I got this car was I went ahead and replaced that with a little cover, a carbon fiber cover to put over those, because it just looked terrible. I think on the newer Zs they have a slightly darker handle, but it still looks sort of the same. It just looks cheap, and even feels cheap too. It feels almost like a cheap plastic. So I don't know, it's just, I hate the flat aluminum. And they even put it on the center bar here, also flat aluminum. So I actually ended up wrapping that in a black suede because I was tired of looking at it, and also during the summer it sort of got really hot in the sun, and anytime I would reach over it, it would burn my arm, so I had to cover that up. But yes, the interior is bland, it's outdated. Nissan, you really need to update this. Number 3 is that there's really nowhere to put your phone. There's not like a little center section here. It sort of fits in the cup holder, but then it kind of sloshes around. You can't really stick it down in the door here because it's just inaccessible and difficult to get to. I mean, so I'm basically forced to put it in the seat, and then when it's in the seat, it wants to slide out and over into the door, which is really annoying. In fact, it's gotten to the point where if I'm missing my phone, I actually go and look behind the passenger seat, because 9 times out of 10, that's where it ended up going. Alright, now number 2, and this one's pretty annoying. I talked about the lack of cup holders in the car, which really isn't a big concern for me, but what does really get to me is the placement of the cup holder. If I have a drink in here, I cannot reach the shifting knob without having to do something like this. And it's really annoying. I have to sort of lift my arm up to be able to get over the cup, and then shifting is just kind of awkward here. The other, I guess, thing you can do is you can sort of wrap your arm around the cup holder like this, but it's just awkward, and I really wish Nissan had taken that cup holder and placed it back where it was in the 350, so that way it was out of the way of the shifting knob. But yeah, that's just annoying. But all of these things that I've just discussed with you, the interior being outdated, the awkward cup holders, the weird bumper, all of these things pale in comparison to the number one thing that I hate about my car, and that is, well, just listen for a second. That is the absolute worst clutch chatter that I have ever heard. It sounds like my car is falling apart. It sounds like it's not going to make it to its next destination. It's really rather embarrassing to drive because whenever I'm pushing the clutch in, it'll make that noise, and people keep looking at me like the car is falling apart, and it's just embarrassing. It sounds like a loose bag of bolts was thrown into the transmission. It sounds like a mouse got in there and is now clapping pans around inside the car. It sounds like Terminator is cold and his teeth are chattering. It sounds like a male toaster and a female toaster have met each other and they're starting to mate. I think I'm going to leave that one in. Anyways, guys, those are the 5 things that I hate about my car and the things that you guys should be aware of before you buy a 370Z. If you like this video and found it informative, give it a thumbs up. Maybe even hit the subscribe button down below because I got a bunch more videos coming, including how bad the blind spots really are in this car. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Later.